This is the Segovia Show.
We should be rolling. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Segovia Show. I'm your host, Segovia. On today's episode, I am joined by a special guest. He goes by the name of Tank. Tank, welcome to the Segovia Show. Great to have you on.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
For the audience that may not be familiar with you, you and I got acquainted on social media, but for everyone else who may not have heard of you, can you please let them know who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is Tank. I'm just a U.S. Marine veteran. I don't do anything these days because of my journey right now with dealing with cancer, leukemia. So, but before I was diagnosed last year, I was involved in creating my own firearms, my own AR-15 platforms. UncleSam'sGuns.com. We still have that company. We still have AR-15 platforms that we build and we sell to the public. So and then I was doing a lot of tactical games, and just staying competitive, different things, just staying out there. Been involved in activism for the right to bear arms for quite some time, since 2008. I had a very large audience, social media brand, Uncle Sammy's Guided Children, that had a reach of over 3 million followers, 2.5 million on Facebook, and 1 million on Instagram, 50,000 on Twitter, many groups with a lot of members. And after 2018, after Trump winning the election, we were branded as Russian bots, as I was branded as a Russian bot. And I was canceled. All my accounts were canceled. My store was canceled, frozen bank accounts, et cetera, et cetera. They took everything from me, just like that. So all the accounts, and every time I had to try to revamp the brand afterwards, I tried many times to revamp the brand, restart over. I was blacklisted. I'm blacklisted right now. If you go to one of these liberal organizations where they have the names of groups or organizations of individuals they consider extremists or whatnot, Uncle Sammy's Guided Children's in their list as anti-government organization, which we're not really anti-government. We're anti-big government. So, we understand there's a purpose for governing, but there's a very thin line between governing and, corrupt government, where's big government. And that's what we try to draw the line. But since my message has always been very constitutionalist, there's a lot of people on both sides of the parties that don't appreciate the message, don't like the message, and they would rather see groups like us, community like us, who have a very good energy in regards to taking our country back and bringing it back to a constitutional state, republic state. They prefer things to be the way they are, So anyways, so I was taken down, and we still have a lot of people out there. There's still a lot of people looking for me, looking for the brand, but it's done. Like Uncle Sammy's Guided Children had to close the company finally at the end, and it was a good time. It was good. It was a good run. We enjoyed it. I loved it. I'm still very much an Uncle Sammy's Guide child. I'm to the next, So now I'm just more involved in training, doing my own consultant work, doing personal training where it comes to pistol training, rifle training, but just very, very small, very personal, very individually. Do my own consultations, but I don't, I just basically right now just trying to get through recovery.
Yeah. Well, to piece that apart, everything that you just said, it's kicking off of what you said, and then what you said at the end there. We'll get to your diagnosis because when, as we're talking off the air, when we got acquainted, you did put an Instagram post that I think that was the second post I saw after I started following you. I think I connected with you because of Boone. He might have mentioned you before. That I should talk to you. Uh, but how long were you in the service?
4 years.
4 years. Okay.
Yep.
And how many tours during those 4 years?
Um, we only went to Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and a couple of times. I mean, the other places where we went are actual too, but just only one main one, which was not a combat operation, more like a training operation, exercise in Qatar, Saudi Arabia. And that's about pretty much what I would consider a deployment. Um, so it was a very peacetime era. 93 to 97. I was 0311 and also machine gun in 0331. And then I got out in 1997, and that's it. That's pretty much it. I served with John Tigan. He was, I believe, Kilo Company, and it was a Lima Company. I do remember there was a moment I think because it's a long story, but there was a moment where I think that we crossed path. It's barracks. We're in the barracks, so it was hard not to cross path with people. But I can recall crossing path with him at the phone line, waiting to make a phone call. And I think he said something sarcastic to me or whatever. But I can look back and go, yeah, that was John Tigan. That was him. But ever since, we've been, with the whole group of guys, kind of been very connected, especially the Marine guys, Boone and Tigan. Always try to stay in touch with those guys. They're just great people, good friends, and just love having them around.
Yeah, and for the audience that are hearing John Tigan, you probably know him best as Tig, as he was represented in the film 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Yeah, he's one of the six GRS guys that were on the ground there in Benghazi, Libya in 2012, I believe it was. So, yeah, that's kind of how we got connected, Tank. So I saw I saw your post with Tig and with Boone saying like getting warm by the fire with my brother Boone, or training with Tig, and it's like, oh, this is a very tight knit community. I almost forgot that I think the three of you are Marines, because I know that Boone was a Marine sniper. You were a machine gunner, I believe. Tig was a Marine as well. Just trying to keep all the ranks in place, so I don't mistakenly call you guys Navy.
No, it's all right. No, yeah, the Marines, man, we always have that brotherhood. I got a lot of Army friends. I got a lot of special operators in the Army. Good dudes, man, and I mean, savages, awesome guys. But the Marines have sort of kind of like that brotherhood, and since we just kind of served during the same period, during the '90s, we have that kind of culture, still driven in us, and in the way that we deal with our own people in our own community. So, yeah, it's a tight knit.
Yeah, and what made you want to serve?
Well, I was born in Cuba. I survived 13 years of communism.
Wow.
And my family, throughout those years, were trying to come to America. My grandparents were American citizens. They owned businesses in America and in Cuba before Castro took over. My grandfather was here in America when Castro took over, and then he tried to bring the family here, and Castro's party wouldn't let him. So he was only able to go back and bring my uncle, who was only 5 years old, and then my father had to stay behind with my grandmother. My grandfather remarried, and my grandmother as well went her separate ways because it was such a long period of wait to try to eventually the Castro regime let my father apply for a visa, and then my grandfather worked, issue that visa to bring in our family. So we came here through the legal immigrations, programs that the United States have. It was a long process. It was a hard process to go through, but we made it here. And then at the age of 17, I became a United States Marine. I was always wanted to become a Marine because my uncle, when he came, to America, he also became a Marine. So he sent pictures to my grandmother in his Marine Corps uniform, and there at the time, I don't know if it's now the same kind of view on Marines in Cuba, but at the time, the Cuban government view Marines as assassins, killers of
Yeah.
the United States government.
Mm.
So as you can tell, I had a lot of resentment growing up in the communist country. So
Mm.
having that dream or that thought that I could become a United States Marine when I came here was top of my list. Very important. When I was leaving Cuba at the embassy, there was a United States Marine guarding, because that's what guards the embassies. American embassies all across the world are guarded by United States Marines, just like the White House. So there was a tall, Marine in his blues with an AR-15, M16 at the time, guarding the front door of the American embassy. And as I walked through the door, I looked at him and I looked at my father and I said, "Hey, I said, Dad, can I be a Marine when I get to America?" He says, "You can be whatever you want." I said, "All right, good." So it was top of my list. And so when I got here, I took a lot of fast paced classes in high school to graduate early. And then as soon as I turned 17, I had a waiver in my hand, and they came pick me up, went to Paris Island, and became a Marine.
Wow. Yeah. And you actually have two worldviews that very few people will ever understand. We might talk a little bit about that a little later. As for me, I'm first generation American, and my parents Salvadoreños came here separately. My father was in California, my mom in Texas, but they met in MacArthur Park. For anyone that knows Los Angeles, so that's where they met. They got married in 1983. The next year, I come along. So I was born in the 80s to watch all this. I don't want to call it the Red Scare because it wasn't the Red Scare, but it was definitely the waning years of the Cold War. I didn't really understand the stuff at the time, but I'm big on history. So looking back, I'm like, wow, I was born in that era. I don't know how much of that might have influenced my outlook on life, but all I could say is that I grew up with an appreciation for those like you, and that heard the call, served, because we take our rights for granted, and more so nowadays that we might be able to discuss a little later. But anyway, that's just a little bit of a tidbit about my background. I had a buddy that served on Marine One. I think it was the second. I want to say it was the second term of Obama. I tell him, hey, I don't care which one you served under. You served the Marine One. That was pretty awesome. Just you served the office of the United States, the President of the United States. There is something though. I think it was Boone that might have told me to talk to you, because on the last time he's been on my my podcast, we had a conversation, and I had to stop every now and then on the podcast. I'm like, hey man, it's okay if you're feeling under the weather or anything. We can always pick this up later, because every now and then he'll have this cough, and he said that that's something that he just has. I'm like, oh really? And in paying attention to my first interview with Oz, I heard him. It almost sounded like he had phlegm, that he was always clearing his throat. It's like, no, I think this is something else. So I did end up asking Boone, is it because of the villa or whatever, or something from your time in the service that might have carried over, and more or less yes. But when you talked about your leukemia? Because you mentioned at the beginning, and speaking about your cancer, was this something that was because of your time in the service?
Yeah. So uh, exposure to burn pits. So when
Mm,
people, here's the how you say the misinformation that happens, and it happens a lot in the veteran community as well. We're our um, worst enemy. The veteran community is very, very bad to each other, because you have a veteran community that is very unique. You have guys that have been to combat. You have guys that have done 3 4 tours. You got guys that are admin, never been to combat, but they've been administrative. You have guys that are special ops. You got guys that are grunts. You got guys that are pokes, and we're not very kind to each other, in that regard. So when you look at when this, even so, that transcends to the civilian community, right? Because the civilian community sees the way we treat each other, and they also see, so they take that, for what it is, for what it's worth. So, as grunts look at pogues and go, man, you're a pogue, man. You never served it. You never saw combat. You know, you really didn't get into the nitty gritty. You don't deserve any benefits. You don't deserve nothing because you were not there. You were not behind the bush. You were not behind the turret, taking down enemies every single day. You didn't have to go to patrols. You had to stay back in the base. And you have this misconception. You have this treatment in the veteran community. We're the worst, and I think
mm,
that's has a lot to do with why we don't get a lot of benefits. That's why we don't really thrive to support each other, to make the veteran community number one priority in our government and our society. To say, hey guys, we need to take care of our guys. It doesn't matter what they did, what they served, whatever. We got to take care of them, because here's the deal: you have, and I'm not talking about thousands. One of the biggest things that's killing veterans these days is cancer. You know,
mm,
and all kinds of cancers, all types of cancers, right? So that is the number one killer right now. Not suicide, which is 22 today, probably 44 a day. Was actually cancer has been killing us for quite some time since the Vietnam era. If you do a research, it'd be like 2 million veterans were exposed to over 2 million veterans were exposed to Agent Orange, just Agent Orange alone. Now, could you imagine how many of them have already died, passed away, or dealing with cancer as we speak? Um, and how many of them trying to get compensated for what they have been exposed to? How many have they been denied? So this is a constant fight for a veteran. Every veteran has to fight for this compensation. So
yeah. And
going back
and I
to
and I mean to interrupt you, but I would like for you to explain to the audience what Agent Orange is for those that do not know. 'Cause I think the majority of people do not
well,
know.
yeah, to be honest, I'm going to be very brief of what my knowledge is. My knowledge is very basic, but Agent Orange is just a chemical that the government was spraying on in Vietnam. You know what I'm saying? And to kill their farming, and supposedly, um,
Mm,
and so that the chemical, as you send patrols out, and also guys that were putting these on the planes to spread it on the ships, the Navy ships. This took it took them longer. They had to actually create a compensated file code specifically for sailors who were on the ships that transported the chemicals on the planes, put the chemicals on the plane, because they were also exposed for handling the
mm,
material. Um, so that was the idea, I believe, and I could be incorrect, or you can correct me if I'm wrong in that regards. And I think the patrol, guys that were doing patrol at the time, would have rub or get it sprayed on themselves as well as they were doing patrols. Okay, it was in the water, it was in the contaminating the waters, in the soil, it was in the plants around them, etc. Okay, so but then you have Cap Lejeune, and you have a base that had contaminated water, and and then you had troops that drink this contaminated, family members that drink this contaminated water, and it got to a point where it was going to deaf ears. This whole time, people were dying, troops were dying from all sorts of types of diseases. They were having children. They were having all kinds of disabilities, and it got to a point where a base colonel's daughter ended up dying from that contaminated water for the government to actually start looking at it, do an investigation, and actually create a code for victims of the Camp Lejeune water to be able to be treated. So now you got a situation where there's guys drinking that water, there's civilians drinking that water who are working at the base, and there's guys that have been exposed to this contaminated water that's killing them for many years, who were not grunts, who were not special operations, who were not MARSOC, who were not infantry, not anything. They were just admin, pogues. So but as like I said, the community, where you've been exposed, you are being compensated for being exposed to something, and the community's hard on that. Like, well, you didn't actually see combat to be exposed. So there's that, there's that fight that we deal with on a daily basis, and it's really sad to see that when it comes to it. So like myself, I served in Qatar, Saudi Arabia. I was there for 3 months. I was exposed to burn pits. And it took 20 years for that exposure to mutate my DNA. And that's how long it takes. It takes over 20 years for that exposure. So you could be fine. You could live. And this is what's happening to a lot of these guys. All of us are pretty much similar age groups. So we all have all kind of in some sort of way been exposed to some type of chemical in some sort of way, in some type of platform, in our service, whether it's nuclear, whether it's burn pits, whether it's Agent Orange, whether it's uranium, Clorox. I mean, there's all kinds of different chemicals that we've been exposed to, and from different gun store ownership, different eras, different times. So this is, and you hear me, and I you hear my sound, my voice, how passionate I am about this, because we have to do something. We are seeing our bravest men, young women, men are dying on the daily basis for exposure to chemicals, and our government is finding all kinds of ways to not deal with the problem. So right now they passed the PACT Act, which was supposed to help the burn pit victims of exposure veterans. And what they did is they threw 500 million. It was a big number. I think billions or millions or whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was a lot of money. And everybody cheered. Wow, we passed this act. It was amazing. Great. We're going to help these burn pit victims. The whole program is based on a research. So all the money that they considerately passed is going to a third-party company, launder money, which I believe is just laundering money, just going from one hand to another and going, hey, we're doing research. Just wait. Just give me a minute. We're still in the research part. While we already know that these guys are dying, and we have so many symptoms and illnesses from these exposures. We have a whole list of them. These guys are dying. So while they're dying and they're asking for compensation, they're asking for help, the VA is telling them, sorry, hold on, we can't do nothing until the research is completed and we create a code for it. So, which then once they create a code, they're going to need more money. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be like, oh, well, now we need another $2-3 billion, right? By that time, a good 100, 300,000, 400,000. Think about the number: 300, 400,000 guys, women have already passed away.
That's awful.
It's insane, man. It's one of the biggest killers right now of our veteran community is cancer, in all kinds of shapes and forms. But it costs the government so much money. It's easy for them to look away. I've been lucky. I've been blessed. Not blessed, not lucky, not blessed. But I think, that I was in a different situation where, in regards to my situation very different because I happened to be in the Marine Corps. I got hurt, and in Bridgeport, California, doing the rock climbing, and I fell 100 feet. I landed on my back.
Snap.
Hurt my back pretty bad. You know what I'm saying? So I ended up getting out honorably discharged. Everything was good to go. You're young. You're going at 17, man. You're young. Your body's young. Your muscles are great. You know what I mean? So you're dealing with the pain in a different way. That mental state. You got a lot of testosterone flowing. You're young, and so you're dealing with pain in a different matter, right? And you got that brainwash mentality, like no, I can deal with this. I can tough it out, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, as I got out and I started to live this different life in transitioning into a normal society, my physical state wasn't as active as I was when I was in the Marine Corps. So of course, my body didn't require 6,000 calories a day or whatever, and having to physically be doing things all the time. So I get into this sedated state, and my body starts crumbling down and start having all these issues. So the VA right away, I had a good doctor that actually gave me a write up and said, you're pretty messed up, dude. Okay, we did an MRI on you. You have radicalopathy on your legs, a radicalopathy on your arms. You got your sciatic nerve shot. We need to cut you up. We need to put steel plates in your back. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're not going to do that. You know what I'm saying? Because he's like, you're going to be in a wheelchair for a year or 2 years. Maybe you'll walk. Maybe you won't walk. You'll go physical therapy. We'll get you back in track eventually.
Yikes.
I'm like, I don't think so, man. Like, I know I'm having all these problems. So, but as long as I can walk and I can, move around, I'm going to suck it up. Right. So, the VA had already given me a rating, and that rating increased as my body got worse and worse and worse and created all these different issues. Then by the time the diagnosis of cancer came up, because of my exposure to burn pits, I was already 100%. So I was already at a level where, the VA had to say, okay, we're going to take care of you. So I was very blessed to have a doctor at the time, Dr. Sajad, who saw my first diagnosis last year, and she's no longer working for the VA, to be honest. And she said to me, here's the crazy thing, what she said to me. She said, if you were somebody else, if you were older, I would not be able to do this for you. And what she said to me, she says, you're still young. You still got a whole life in front of you. So what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to send you to the best hospital money can buy. It's going to be a private hospital, and it's going to be the best cancer hospital that money can buy. Now you think about that for a minute, and you think about all these other veterans before me who are waiting to be seen, who are waiting to be taken care of, and they're not treated that way because they don't have the ratings or because they're too old. Maybe they're not in the physical capabilities, but it's almost like a death board, like a death, what I'm saying? Like almost like a death board, like throwing a dice, right? Like you get to live, you get to die. You get to live, you get to die. You're too old. We can't spend the money on you. You know what I'm saying? That's nonsense. That's crazy, man. That's insane. And people talk about socialist healthcare.
I know. I want to say that.
That is socialist
the rationing healthcare to our Marines. I thought that was not the United States, but it sounds like it's very much the VA.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%, man. So, and it was crazy. Even through going through the stuff that I went through, my bone marrow transplant. I had to get permission from the VA after they've already been diagnosed, already approved my Moffitt, right? Already approved that. The VA, what do you call it? I had to go through like literally jump hoops to get the VA to approve my bone marrow transplant. And there's no small task. The bone marrow transplant costs $500,000. So, the VA took care of that and it's taking care of that. The VA is taking care of all that right now. So I'm very happy. Like I said, I'm one of the blessed, lucky ones to tell you how good the VA has been good to me in that regards because where I have been. But let's
Yeah.
say somebody like you know like Boone, for example, right? Or Tig or somebody else who might have to deal with this, or Ox or anybody else. Um, they have to go through a lot of hoops because they don't even have a service connection yet. So they have to prove that service connection, and then from that point, increase that service connection to be able to get the type of help and treatment and so forth that they should deserve without having to reach in their pocket to pay for it. And
Yeah.
and this is just crazy, man. We're talking about one person, me, one. We're talking about millions of veterans, hundreds
Yeah.
of thousands of veterans, man. So this is the biggest killer right now, man. It's cancer. It's always been cancer. It's always been some type of illness, leukemia, pulmonary cancer, brain cancer, lung cancer, what I'm saying, prostate
Yeah.
cancer, what I mean? You name it, women too, But again, going back to the culture, veteran culture. Veteran culture is the reason we don't get the benefits we deserve is because the veteran culture, all right, it hates each other. They hate one another in that regards because we're always stumping on each other. We're always, I'm the baddest on the block. I am this, I did 12 tours, I did 10 tours. I deserve everything. You don't deserve nothing. But what if that guy lived in Camp Lejeune, drink the water, his family drink it, and his kids have now disabilities, and he was just a poke. He just, he just, he just worked in the admin section, flip papers, you know. He deserves everything. So I did at one point, me and Tig, we went and in my sergeant major that I served with, and if you want me to send it to you, we wrote a reform act that is very complex and very easy too, very simple. But the problem with simple and just factual and good that will help all veterans is that there's no money in it. You take the money out of the people making money and you actually put it to where it needs to go. And I went to DC and I took that reform act for the VA to everybody, and everybody closed the door on me.
Wow.
They closed the door on me because the VA is a $300 billion elephant, and it's going to keep growing. And as long as that money is trickling in every year, and people are making money out of that, big pharma is one of the biggest money makers of the VA. $33 billion go directly to the big pharma, just like that. They have a big stake on making sure that the VA stays the same. And as long as we have that going, we're never going to change. It will continue to be what it is today. And there's also a cap. The VA has a cap. Every year, only 30% of veterans who apply for compensation or service connection, only 30% get admitted. Only 30% are approved. No matter. It doesn't matter if we have 60% of veterans who's supposed to be approved, who have the actual documentation. Hey! Sorry.
That's all right.
He's old, man. When I get excited, he gets excited. But he's like, yeah.
Tell him.
Tell him. And so his name is Tank too.
That's cool.
Yeah, Tank Junior.
Thank you.
So yeah, only 30. So even if you have 60%, man, even if you have 35% of veterans who actually have the proper documentation and probably service connection, background, history, only 30%. 30%. That 5% will have to wait till next year, and hopefully they get through. And that's what happens with the VA community. They get frustrated. The VA veterans get frustrated. Think about this. If you're a veteran, you're trying, so you have everything. You have this thing full of documentation about your service and what you've been through, and it proves that you have a service connection, and you're using that to get the VA to approve it, and the VA at last minute tells you, no, sorry, can't do it. So that goes to next year, and you keep doing this every year. You keep fighting for it, but you never can get through the door, right? It gets to a point where these veterans who are dealing with all these issues, they have nowhere else to go. They see themselves as committed suicide being the ultimate ending to their frustrations because they got no answers and nowhere to go. So if I could fix, like I said, with the reform that I wrote, I could fix the VA in no problem. No problem. It's just in a heartbeat. Because what happened is I take that $300 billion and I put it on the private sector. I make the VA very small, and I leave only the regional offices to deal with the service connections, documentations, and filing and counseling of veterans. And then from that point, I use that money to send the veterans to a private doctors. And nobody's going to, the government, everything the government does, man, is always exaggeration to make more money, and you can see that by the way that the money spent, how we spend, how much in debt we are today, especially when the Pentagon right now is looking for war. When a pencil, we're paying for a pencil like $25 or $5. You see where I'm coming from? I mean, napkins are. I don't know how much we're paying for napkins, but if you look at the track record of our government expenditure on small things, from that point you realize that we have no checks and balance. Nobody's looking at this and going, wait a minute, guys, what are you guys doing? This doesn't cost this much money, right? So when you give the government $300 billion, right, they're going to make sure they spend it. Of course, they're going to make sure they spend it, just to show that they spend it. But they're going to spend it in such a way that that it just basically throwing money down the drain, And at the end of the day, the CEOs, I just learned this the other day, but the CEOs of the VA, they get a kickback. And not too long ago, there was a story of this of the VA officers, on the board, that they were overpaid $10 million. They get paid buku money, man. They get paid millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars at the end of the year, bonus to keep everything the same way. That's crazy. How is this even possible? How is this even possible, man? So this is happening right now as we speak, and it's like, wait a minute. You're working for the board, or you're an officer for the board of the VA. You're like the top, echelon of the VA, and you're getting, let's say, $1 million or anything over about a bonus that you should have gotten. Shouldn't you come up to the VA to say, hey guys, I just got this big check. I'm not sure where it came from, but I don't think I deserve it. It's a little too high. I know it's going to get a bonus, but maybe this is a little too high. No. It was an investigation because they realized at the end, after a year, that they overpaid. So they were like looking at the phone. Wait a minute, we overpaid you. But nobody said anything. Nobody said, hey, wait a minute, guys. This is too much money. Maybe you guys need to look at this one more time. No, they're not going to say. They're not going to, bring up something like that. They're going to keep the money. And that's how criminals think. That's how thieves think. There's no honesty, sincerity, no really hard minds for this kind of things. And if you look at that as a principle, how the leadership in our government is being run, is a trickle down poor leadership that, every agency, every government agency, every department is pretty much, has to be reformed, has to be revamped, has to be cleaned up, And
in some cases, I argue that some areas should be abolished altogether. I'm of the opinion on some of those agencies that are just bloat bureaucracy, or they're just so far down the line that you can't reform them anymore. That if you got to do it again, you could get rid of the current one and start afresh. But it is
the
crazy.
IRS on the IRS is another one. So yeah, there's a lot of agencies, a lot of government agencies who are just drunk in power, and
Yeah.
they just keep them growing and keep on adding on unconstitutional rulings on them. But yeah, the VA is a pretty dark place. You start opening up just the pages and start looking at it from a eyeglass.
Yeah, and for some that follow me might be familiar with the show Lotto with Crowder, hosted by Steven Crowder. Up until last year, he had a co-host named Dave Landau, and Dave Landau shared his story. His father was a Vietnam veteran. Now, if I remember the story correctly, his father was affected by Agent Orange. So uh, there was no code, as you said, yet. So when he was trying to get help from the VA is like, "There's nothing wrong with you. You're fine." So he had to go privately, and he was just racking up all these medical bills. Eventually, his father does pass away, and his mom, and I think this was the early '90s. His mom is stuck with all the bills. She can't pay. The breadwinner is gone, and Dave Landau, as a son, wasn't exactly the model son. She kills herself, and he's kind of like a leaf in the wind trying to make sense of all this. Now, Dave, thank God, right now he's a comedian. He's touring. He has a son that he's trying to raise better than he raised how he was raised and things like that. But when we when we actually stop to listen to stories, we find out this is more prevalent. We probably know someone that has been affected by this more so than we think. Because I think the whole burn pits thing didn't come more into the public eye until that film, The Outpost, starring Scott Eastman. Because that one did reference the burn pits. One of the characters was dealing with the burn pits. And are you familiar with that film, The Outpost?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it was one of the first that highlighted it, and at least that's how I remember it. So I'm watching it with my wife. My wife, who's Taiwanese, actually just loves watching military films just for the heroism. She doesn't like the bloody, gory content, but she's there to watch it with me. Black Hawk Down, 13 Hours, American Sniper, and all that. She's cut from a different cloth because she's always the one asking me. I'm like, honey, we've seen them all, so it's like we have to watch them again. So when I watch The Outpost, I'm like, honey, they're highlighting something here that we don't really see often or at all. And I'm willing to bet you that more people will be talking about this because of this movie, and it did. I don't remember when that the burn pit act that you're talking about passed. I don't remember if it was before or after the film, but I know there was more of a clamor towards it. But you're one of the first that I've spoken to that have had those effects, because as you said, it was only about 3 months of exposure, but it took this long for you to experience it. Just for those that are unaware, because you did talk about that you had other ailments and stuff, but dude, I seen some of your Instagram pics, man, with Tick just lifting, just pumping iron, lifting up what feels like a tank. You look like a tank, but you were doing that and didn't know that you had this incoming diagnosis, right?
Yeah, you know, when you have this mentality, man, and I'm not telling you I'm, the strongest man, I'm toughest guy, but you know, these military guys, a lot of military guys, we have this inbred mentality of dealing with pain and dealing with suffering. And so when we feel like we are not up to the task, we beat up ourselves. We try to, somehow beat ourselves up in the process because we feel like we're being weak, we're being soft. We're not up to the challenge, and we're not up to the level of professionalism that is required for us to perform. So we beat ourselves up. We look the other way. We don't try to get help. It's really hard for us to get help or to admit that we need help or to say that,
Admitting. Yeah.
even go to the doctor. You know what I'm saying? When I went to the doctor, man, it was basically, I went to the ER, and basically it was, my heart was literally coming out of my chest. I was into a point where I was going to have a stroke. And I have been having these fevers in the middle of the day, fevers, like shaking fevers, and and just I couldn't. I'm a practitioner of jujitsu, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I was doing very well, and I was doing 5 minute rolls, 5, 6 5 minute rolls at a time, training every day, training twice a day, and all of a sudden I can't even do 5 minutes, and I'm having a really tough time, and I'm really tough on myself. So eventually I got to the ER, but that's what we do. The veteran mindset is like that. So while I was going through that, and putting myself through competitions, really tough competitions and whatnot. I wasn't performing to the level of the guys next to me. And I beat up myself for it because I was like, what's wrong with me? Like I should be able to run 3 miles in like 20 minutes. I should be able to, keep my stamina up. I train every day. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I do this, I do that, and and there was something going on, man. There was something in my heart, there was something in my lungs. I went to get different tests, and they all came back with no information, no nothing. I mean, inconclusive. And so finally, like I said, man, my body just started decomposing, and it got to a point where I had to go to the ER. And that's where I was very happy I was very blessed to have this doctor. We just said, let's do a bone marrow biopsy. Whatever you have is going to show up at the bone marrow. And so she did a bone marrow, and Lord and behold, I had CD33 plus leukemia. And then she said, were you in Iraq? Were you in Afghanistan? I said, no. I was like, not in Iraq. I was in Qatar. He's like, okay, that's close enough. Did you do anything around burn pits? And I said, yes, I did.
Wow.
And I show her pictures. I got pictures of it. And she's like, okay, how long was that? And I said, well, 95, 96. And she's like, yep. This is exposure from burn pits. It takes about over 20 years to mutate your DNA. So it is, and this type of cancers, illnesses, it starts slowly. You first feel tired, you feel weak, you feel your stamina is low. You have all these gain weight, really gain like a massive weight, gain weight, and you can't lose it, things like that. And like I said, you as a veteran, you start being hard on yourself. You're like, I need to diet more. You go these extreme diets and extreme workouts and extreme things to try to, get back in shape. And it was something much bigger than that, man. There was nothing I could do about it, and it took me, finally to be diagnosed. But, it's crazy because when I started doing jujitsu, I got into really good shape. I actually started to feel really good about myself. And I lost almost like 60, 70 pounds. And I was about to go into a competition, and I was in really good shape, man. I felt good, and all of a sudden, boom, just went down the hill. So,
It's been 1 year now, like that, huh? Since the diagnosis.
yeah, last year, April last year, March or April last year, started, and then chemo, radiation, bone marrow transplant. October 3rd, it was a year. October 3rd, it was my birthday, new birthday they call it. But now I'm dealing with graft versus host disease, which attacks 50% of the bone marrow individuals like myself. And what happens is your old immune system, because what the transplant, what it does is it removes the old immune system and puts a new immune system in. So it removes that DNA, that mutated DNA with that's been exposed to chemicals. It removes that and it plants a new one. Okay, with a new new blood type and everything. And so everything changes in your body. But what happens is your old immune system sometimes doesn't like it. It doesn't matter how good of a match is. I had a 100% match, and it starts fighting back for takeover. It's crazy. It's like, oh, I have a World War II happening in my body right now. You know what I'm saying? Like one side wants to kill the other. So that old immune system wants to take over. He's like, who the hell are you? Why are you here?
Yeah.
And the new one is like, no, I'm here to stay, buddy. So the old immune system gets mad and starts going after your liver, starts going after your organs. And if your organ starts failing, then you die. There's no cure. There's no other cure after this. I have no other cure. other than survive this, and that's it. I have no other choice but survive this. Cancer is not coming back, I don't think, but graft versus is either graft versus host disease wins or it doesn't. Because once it goes acute, it goes chronic. There's nothing. So I'm taking a lot of medication right now. I'm taking 25 medications just to keep it at bay. Last week, I went to get my year bone marrow biopsy. I'll get the results in like 2 weeks. And then I got a blood test. My liver is starting to look better, so the numbers started to go down. You know, but I'm on a lot of medications, man, steroids and whatnot, and they make me real weak, real tired. You know, so I'm, you know, I'm still I'm still messed up. You know, like it is what it is, but hey, you know, one step at a time. You know what I mean? One day at a time. I take one day at a time, man. I got to live my life to the fullest. I keep trying to live my life to the fullest. And, you know, I'm supposed to be in bed all day. I'm supposed to be away from people. I'm supposed to not train. I'm supposed to not do a lot of things because I have no immune system, zero immune system. Like I had a IV put in on my hand for the surgery last week, and just an IV, just a little, they just put a little thing. I got a infection, just and it was clean. They cleaned it, they put it in, but little cut, a little bite, anything that cuts my skin or anywhere, I develop an infection. So if I get a cold, I had a cold at the beginning of the year, got a cold. I almost died. It's like it was 6 weeks with a cold. Like I felt like I was going to die. And when I went to the hospital, they're like, dude, he's like, well, there's nothing we can do for you. You're already on antibiotics up to the teeth. So, there's that's it, there's not much we can do for you. You already are the highest level medication you could probably have. So either your body fights it, beats it, or you're going to end up in the hospital really bad, and that's a different story. So it's a fight, man. It's a fight every day. And that's why right now I don't support the war. I don't support people supporting the war, any war. I don't support sending our sons and children to any war outside of protecting our own interests here in our own soil. And I am, call me what you want, call me names what you want, but until I see every veteran being taken care of and veterans being put first in America, I don't want to see any more of our kids being sent to the front lines of any foreign soil for any politician. I don't care if it's a Republican or Democrat, and I don't care. I just don't care. You know what I mean?
No, and I'm totally in agreement with you there, and that's why I wanted to bring you on. 'Cause I think you telling your story is what's most important to be able to hear out, because not the stuff that we listen to. We always hear support our troops, cheer them on, because they need to support when they're going out there. But then I said, what happens when they come back? Do you forget? I'm in just a few miles out from Los Angeles, the homeless population or capital of the entire country. A lot of them are vets. There was this story about this homeless veteran that was in Venice Park, and the LAPD, one of them who had a relative from the veteran community and the VA helped out. He was moved to tears when he was able to get connected to get the VA in Wilshire Boulevard to be able to take the homeless veteran in. But just a few days later, maybe 3 days later, the vet was back on Venice Boulevard. I said, what happened? It's like, I didn't like it there, because he wanted to be out there on Venice Beach instead of supposedly where they'll take care of him. And it's just a tragic story how we don't take care of our veterans as we should. And until
come here, go to your bed. Sorry about that, bro. Hey,
no
to your
problem.
bed. Go. Come on, go to your bed. Sorry.
Not a problem. But like you said, until we're able to take care of our men and women that we're asking to put their lives on the line, for those that have families, to say, hey, sacrifice all that, sacrifice the loved ones you might not ever see again for the cause. And then they come back and their lives are forever altered, such as yours has been. And you had the benefit of the VA actually stepping up. Whereas let's say 70% of the other veterans know, then what was the point if we're not going to take care of those that we supposedly are always saluting? It really does frustrate me that I'm with you. Hey, I've never been known as an isolationist, but I agree with you. No new wars. We got to take care of our own. We're going to close our damn border. It's like we got to take care of our own. And until that changes, I can't see.
Yeah.
I can't see myself asking anybody to go lay down their lives, knowing that their family might not even be taken care of. That was one of the questions I had for Oz when I brought him on. It's like, hey, the movie kind of mentions this, but technically, the GRS violated their contract. There's only one workers' compensation for private contractors, and they were not going to cover anything. Nothing for I don't know, probably not for Glenn, but for sure not for Roan, because he disobeyed a direct stand-down order, which is one of the more controversial parts of the story. I don't know. I don't know if because Tig was inside the villa with all that diesel fumes that he was inhaling, that might have long-term effects for him. Just there's so much there to unpack, but because I guess a political connection or something. That's how Oz was able to get
every veteran, and especially those guys, have been exposed to some type of chemical in their service. And Boone, like Boone being a sniper, being what he was in the Marine Corps, he was exposed in the Marine Corps. So, as well. So, I'm telling you right now, like I said, every veteran, I believe that every veteran should have automatically, once they get out of the military, once a service member gets out of the military, they should be automatically giving 10% service connection. Automatic. Just because of, as long as they did their 4 years honorable discharge minimum, should get service connection 10%. And then from that point, whatever happens after that, whatever increase happens that, and they can prove that, things have, in their whatever, I'm saying, they're having these illnesses or symptoms or whatever, then they can increase that service connection. But automatically 10%, minimum, because of the type of activities that, we're in the military. This is the military. This is not a Boy Scout. This is not, this is not a walk in the park, man. You're working for the government. You're getting injected with stuff that you don't even know. Hey, today we're going to give you an injection. What is it for? I don't care. Just put it on. It's just shut up. We're going to give you an injection. You're going to suck it up, and you signed it out of line. We own you. We're just going to give it to you because, it's a new test. It's a new thing we're doing, new research we're doing, or they're doing it in our military. And you have to take this pill. You know how many pills I took in the military? I had no idea what I was taking. No idea. But hey, you got to take this blue pill, this green pill, this red pill. All these things were given to us in every year, in every service. Things like this happen that I have talked to a lot of veterans. So I believe that, 10% minimum service connection, and then a medical card where they can use it to any private doctor as they please to go see any private for anything, dental, vision, and everything would be covered. And just I will take that VA monster and turn it into a like this little 10%. And then the rest of the billions of dollars I put into a hedge fund or some type of fund, being managed by veterans, that it will grow every year because every year they get $300 billion. So every year, $300 billion, and every year grows. So, next year is $320 billion, so forth. So every year grows. So you get this, investment fund, and you get this money to grow, not only grow, but also helping every service connected veteran will get compensated fairly, 100%, will get free medical at the best doctor money can buy, and all this, bureaucracy and red tape and all that out of the window. They don't want that because they don't make any money. Everything will go to them, and it's so simple.
That is crazy. Look, I have to ask this question because after everything that I've been hearing, one of the more common things that I guess the general public hears awareness for is like, oh, veteran suicide and all this, and the number 22 is thrown around a lot, and I agree with you. I think it's higher, but how many of those suicides do you think are because they have no way out because they couldn't get treatment for whatever they're suffering from?
I believe a lot. I believe I will say conservatively at least 40%. At least minimum 40%, minimum, bro. And I'm being conservative. And a good example of that is what's happening in Canada right now with veterans. Veterans are, Canada has this new thing about, you can sign up, you can up for having assisted suicide.
Yeah.
Assisted suicide, and a lot of veterans are taking that.
Oh my goodness.
So if you think about it, if you put that into play here in the United States, assisted suicide for veterans, oh my God, that number would just skyrocket, man. We would lose these guys left and right, like you wouldn't even believe it, man. I say it was 60%, higher than that. And thank God we're not Canada. Thank God we're not going through that. But here's what I'm saying. You have a socialist healthcare in Canada. It was supposed to be the best healthcare. They talk about all the best healthcare money, and they can't take care of their own people, where they have actually added on assisted suicide to be able to kill them off because they can't take care of them.
Go figure, huh?
Ridiculous. So. But
wow.
Anyway, I mean, we can talk about those topics, man, nonstop. But the veteran issue, like, if you want to talk about, I mean, like I said, it's so much. That's why I gave you that solution about reform. It's messed up, but there is a way to fix it, and it starts. There's a way to fix it. My idea can be fixed, but it takes the veteran community as a whole, everybody in the veteran community, to push that, to get behind that, and to support that. If we get the whole veteran community together, man, we take over DC. Like, there's no doubt about it, man. When I was doing the Obama, man, let me tell you a couple of things that happened when I was doing the Obama. Like I said, I was an activist. The Obama closed up the parks, closed up everything, and I don't know if there's sequester. Remember this? I don't know if you remember the sequester, and he closed the park. So World War II veterans that go up there to DC, who visit these parks, were not allowed to go in there. And these visits, these trips are well planned way ahead, because you got to take these guys that are like 95 years old in wheelchairs, fly them up there so they can have, a good time. And so, Obama just, he used that as a token to get the government, to get the country to pass, to give him more money for whatever he was trying to do. So he's, oh, you're not going to give me more money? Well, I'm going to close down the Veterans Park. I'm going to close the public parks, especially the veteran parks, And so we went up there and we protested, and we protested. And I remember that the DC police didn't go to work that day. They said, no, we're not going to go to work. And we had thousands of veterans up there. And they had all closed up, I don't know, you call it the fences, Yeah. And they had everything closed up. So, these people, Obama's admin, their people were freaking out because they couldn't get anybody to secure us. So they brought the horses, police in horses, and they brought this, like at last minute, they brought these, rented cops at the last minute to come, hold us down, to come, push us around. And it wasn't good for them. They tried to take a flag over one of our guys and got into a rumble. He ended up getting the flag back. And they pushed, a couple of old ladies that were there, supporting us. And things got really ugly. But we took all those fences and we brought them to the front of the White House. I don't know, it was like 300 from the Vienna Memorial. From the Vienna Memorial, Lincoln Memorial, all those memorials, we took all those fences and we lift them up and we brought them and we stacked them, all over. But that's what it takes when a veteran community comes together and says, enough. You know what I mean? Like, we're done. We're not going to play your games. You're going to do what we're telling you to do. And we don't have leaders in our veteran community that do that for us.
Yeah.
You know, we sent veterans to D.C., to Congress, to our government, in the hopes that they could fight for us, and they end up always working some type of back deal, and then try to sell us this back deal like it's a freaking, you know, icing on a cake, on a piece of turd,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But anyways,
The lobby from the military industrial complex, man. They
right.
get them. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, you know, I know we have it here for an hour. I can't be here longer than that. I really appreciate. So I don't know how long this is, you know, going to be. I wish I could, you know, give you more time, but,
Oh,
um,
no, I
but
think it was good. We could there's so many topics you brought up we could unpack, but
yeah, and
just
we could do
keeping it.
this. You know, we could do this again another time. You know, more time. You know, in another hour. I can only do 1 hour, man. I start, you know, I guess start to get headaches and whatnot. But I apologize for that.
No, dude, don't apologize for anything. You're the one going through it. I appreciate you giving me your time and for the letting the audience know, hearing the story. This episode's airing on Veterans Day because I want people to hear from a veteran what veterans go through, because we only see the bravado stuff, you know, the hurrahs, I guess, but we need to know the what I feel is that's the tip of the iceberg. The rest of it underwater are the stories like yours that people don't hear about. Sometimes when it's too late, and then they start naming maybe parks after so and so because the activism got loud. No, you're here telling a story. I love war stories. I've been told a lot of war stories, but it's hearing the after war story is equally or more important to me, because that should strike a chord in people to get them to champion some kind of change. It shouldn't just be you guys that have fought for our rights. It's us, that a grateful American public should be fighting for yours too. So that's how I feel about it, and that's where I'll leave it. Hey, Tank, where can people follow you so they can keep up to date with like stuff that you're up to and with your recovery journey?
If they want to follow me, they can follow me at the Tank Guns, and you know, they took my Twitter account down, but it's the Tank Guns, THE Tank Guns, and they can follow me there. For now, you know, that's where I've been posting. You know, I just post as a hobby nowadays. You know, I post my thoughts every day, but you know, it's just pretty much a hobby. Eventually, they're going to take me down as well, and just, you know, I'm gonna edge with the social media people. Once they find me, they'll take me down again. But one thing I want to add about because you're probably going to get some comments about this when I said about the 10%. This is one of the excuses veterans do. Well, you got a lot of guys out there that want to, you know, kind of milk the system and kind of, you know, create, you know, false claims and whatnot. We can't have those guys do that and whatnot. The percentage of veterans or individuals that want, you know, are able to get through the system and do it so well to be able to scam the system is so small that thinking about those guys and making, you know, making rules or trying to, you know, focus so much on them hurts the other 70% who are actually trying to get through the system the right way and through the real process. But that's the biggest excuse. We are our own enemies. You know, veterans are our own enemies. So that you're going to hear veterans. I have had debates with, you know, guys, special ops guys and stuff like. And that's one thing they say to me. They're like, well, you know, what about the guy that's, you know, trying to scam the system? What about him? What about him? Very, very small percentage. And if they get through, well, give them a gold medal, man. And you know what I mean? I mean, I would say, you know, okay, you know, you
Did it? What's your secret?
you might as well take it, buddy. You know, we got politicians in DC, bro, scamming the system every single day, and nobody's stopping them. Not a single person. So if a guy goes through and he's able to get through, but he's 100% somehow, somewhat, then you know what, man, he earned it. Let him have it. You know what I'm saying? I'd rather focus on that higher majority of veterans get what they need than focus on that 1%. You will always have knuckleheads. It doesn't matter what you do in life. You will always have knuckleheads. If we focus on the knuckleheads, we'll never get shit done, man.
That's true. Yeah, that goes for anywhere, including in the
Yep.
fields of the industries that I'm in. There's always the one
Yep.
bad apple. That doesn't mean you should ruin it for everybody else. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Thank you.
But Tank, that's
And
what
that's
we'll
it,
leave it.
brother.
Yeah, and Tank, don't hang up yet, but that's what we'll leave for the audience. All the links for your Instagram and your Twitter, I'll be leaving in the show notes accompanying this episode at www.theandrewsegovia.com. Tank, thank you so much for your time. I would love to have you back on so we can also talk some other juicy subjects that you brought up. But until then,
Awesome, bro.
thank you. We're praying for your recovery, and I'll be following your story on Instagram.
Thank you.